Dock 7 was quiet, the water still and dark under low amber lights. The kind of place where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. Except for the ship. It didn't belong there. It was too large, too sharp, too wrong. Every other spacefaring civilization had, over centuries, refined their ships into smooth, elegant curves. Clean lines. Symmetry. Efficiency that looked like art. This ship had none of that. Its hull was uneven, flat in some places, angled in others. Plates overlapped like armor slapped on in a hurry. The structure looked aggressive, unfinished, like someone had built it in anger and never bothered to make it beautiful afterward. The dock workers had stopped trying to understand it months ago. They just called it one thing. The Beast. Its official designation was far less dramatic. ES Harbinger, Prototype Class 01. But no one used that name unless they had to. Because names like that felt controlled. And this ship didn't feel controlled. At the rear, 3 massive engine bells loomed like open mouths. Along its flanks, sealed panels stretched across the hull, too many of them. Engineers had labeled them reinforced plating in official reports. Not because they believed it, but because the alternative explanation was worse. High above the dock, Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation window. She held a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She hadn't noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the Harbinger, studying it the way a creator studies something they built with their own hands, and still don't fully understand. Behind her, footsteps approached. They called again. Director Malik Chin stepped beside her, a tablet tucked under his arm. His face carried the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from too many years of carrying something heavy. The Empire's ambassador wants a formal response, he said. 48 hours. Alina didn't look away from the ship. I know. The council meets in 3 hours. I know that too. Chin hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, more quietly this time. They sent the full count. That got her attention. Alina turned slightly. Verification satellites confirmed it this morning, he continued. Pause. Then. 412 ships. The number hung in the air. Below them, small figures in orange suits moved across the Harbinger's hull, scanning, checking, preparing, tiny against something that looked like it could swallow them whole. Chin exhaled slowly. The council is going to ask for your position. This time Alina didn't hesitate. My position, she said calmly, is the same as it's been for 3 years. She set the cold coffee down on the ledge, looked back at the ship, and said quietly but without doubt, we built it. A beat. Then. Now we use it. The message had arrived 7 days earlier. It came through every official channel the Empire had ever used with Earth. Diplomatic bands, relay networks, even the observer status communication lines that had, for 30 years, carried nothing more threatening than trade updates and polite assessments. This time the tone was different. Still formal. Still precise. Still wrapped in the language of diplomacy. But the meaning was unmistakable. Disarm. Surrender the vessel designated Harbinger. Submit for inspection and decommissioning. Face corrective action. The Empire did not use the word attack. They didn't need to. Everyone on Earth understood what corrective action meant when it came from a civilization that had ended wars in months and erased fleets in minutes. In the underground council chamber beneath Geneva, the air felt heavier than usual. 47 people sat around a table designed for 30. Leaders, generals, advisors, observers. Too many voices for one decision. At the center of the room, a large display showed a tactical projection of the solar system. And just beyond the orbit of Neptune, a formation. Red markers tightly grouped. 412 ships. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Council Chair Burkov broke the silence. The Empire's ultimatum is clear, he said, his voice steady, practiced. We have 26 hours remaining to respond. He tapped the display. Their fleet will arrive at the system edge shortly after that. A general leaned forward, jaw tight. Can we confirm that number? Burkov nodded. Multiple independent satellites. All readings consistent. Another voice, sharper, more anxious. That's not a corrective fleet. That's an invasion force. It's both, someone else replied quietly. A ripple of tension moved through the room. Because they all knew the truth. If the Empire needed 412 ships for one target, then the target had already frightened them. Burkov continued. Their demand is limited. They want the Harbinger. And if we refuse? A diplomat asked. No one answered immediately. They didn't need to. Everyone in the room had already done the math. Orbital bombardment scenarios. Population loss projections. Infrastructure collapse timelines. Numbers that grew too large too quickly. Finally, Burkov said it out loud. If we refuse, they will take it. Pause. By force. At the far end of the table, Alina Vasquez sat with her hands flat against the surface, her expression unreadable. She had listened to every argument. Fear. Anger. Negotiation proposals. Delay tactics. All of it. Now the room slowly turned toward her. Burkov met her eyes. Commander, he said, we need your assessment. Alina didn't move right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, measured. The Empire sent 412 ships, she said. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Burkov replied. We are aware. Alina shook her head slightly. No, she said. You're hearing the number. She looked around the table. But you're not understanding it. Silence. If they believed the Harbinger was harmless, she continued, they would have sent 20 ships. Maybe 50. Enough to make a statement. Her gaze hardened. They sent 412. A general leaned forward. Or they're making sure there is no fight. Alina met his eyes. Same thing, she said. A beat. If they were sure we couldn't hurt them, they wouldn't need to make sure. The room went quiet again. Different this time. Heavier. Because the implication had finally landed. They weren't just being threatened. They were being measured. And whatever the Empire had calculated, it had scared them. Burkov exhaled slowly. So your recommendation? Alina didn't hesitate. We do not surrender the ship. A few voices immediately started to rise, but she continued cutting through them. We launch. That stopped the room. Completely. Her voice didn't change. We find out who was right about what it can do. Silence stretched across the table. Because for the first time since the message had arrived, someone had stopped reacting to the threat and started challenging it. Burkov leaned back slightly, studying her. This is not a unanimous decision, he said carefully. Alina nodded. It doesn't need to be. A long pause. Then, the vote stands. Not clean. Not confident. But enough. Authorization granted. Somewhere above them in the dark waters of Dock 7. The beast waited. And the clock was still ticking. 40 years earlier, humanity had received its first confirmed signal from beyond the solar system. It wasn't debris. It wasn't a probe. It was a message. Structured. Intentional. Sent on a frequency that required the receiver to understand what a frequency was before they could even detect it. It said only one thing. We know you're there. Do nothing. It took humanity 18 years to answer the question hidden inside that sentence. Who was we? The answer when it came was overwhelming. The interstellar dominion, what humans quickly shortened to the Empire, was not just another alien civilization. It was the civilization. 41 member species. 17,000 inhabited systems. A military force that had ended multiple wars in less than a year. They had faster-than-light travel. Humanity didn't. They had energy shields that could absorb incoming fire and dissipate it as heat. Humanity didn't. They had weapons that could strike across distances so vast that traditional combat ranges felt meaningless. Humanity had chemical rockets and nuclear warheads. The gap wasn't just technological. It was humiliating. First contact happened a decade later. Officially, it was declared a success. No conflict. No misunderstanding. No casualties. But everyone involved knew the truth. It had gone the way a job interview goes when both sides understand the outcome before the conversation even begins. Humanity was not ready. And the Empire made that clear, politely, professionally, and without cruelty. Earth was granted observer status. Not membership. Not alliance. Observer. Which meant humanity got a seat in certain rooms, but no voice in the decisions. They were allowed to watch. To listen. To learn, carefully within limits. The Empire built a relay station in the outer solar system. Stationed a small diplomatic team in orbit. Sent trade delegations every few years. They treated Earth the way an advanced civilization treats something that might one day matter. But doesn't yet. For 30 years, humanity played that role perfectly. No aggressive expansion. No military escalation. No violations of protocol. Just a developing species, moving slowly, learning carefully, behaving exactly the way the Empire expected them to behave. What the Empire didn't see was what humanity was doing quietly. Because while they were attending diplomatic meetings and filing observer reports, they were also reading every paper the Empire had ever published on propulsion systems. Every documented design philosophy behind alien shielding technology. Every recorded battle doctrine from 20 different species. They studied everything. They argued about it. They tore it apart in underground facilities buried beneath mountains on 3 continents. Engineers, physicists, weapons designers, sitting across long tables surrounded by projections and equations, asking one question over and over again. What would we do differently? The Empire built shields that absorbed energy. Humans looked at that and asked, what if the energy never stays coherent long enough to be absorbed? The Empire built weapons that fired in a single precise axis. Humans asked, what if we fire in multiple axes and let interference patterns do the damage? The Empire refined elegance. Humans explored disruption. Different questions. Different answers. For 30 years, the Empire believed humanity was learning how to catch up. They were wrong. Humanity wasn't trying to catch up. They were trying to build something the Empire had never imagined. And when they finally did, they didn't announce it. They didn't test it publicly. They didn't file any reports. They put it in Dock 7. Let the Empire's satellites photograph it from orbit. Let them measure its size, count its weapon ports, build their assessment, and assume that they understood what they were looking at. They didn't, because the Harbinger wasn't built to match the galaxy. It was built to break its expectations. The work never appeared in official records. On paper, humanity spent 30 years advancing slowly, incremental improvements, small-scale research, harmless development programs that fit neatly within observer status expectations. That was the version the Empire saw. The real work happened underground. Deep facilities carved into mountain ranges. Isolated research bunkers beneath oceans. Black-budget labs that existed only in fragments of classified files. Places where the question wasn't, how do we match them? But, how do we beat something that already thinks it has won? The teams working there weren't trying to replicate alien technology. They were trying to misunderstand it on purpose. To break its assumptions. To find the blind spots hidden inside perfection. The Empire's shield systems were masterpieces, designed to absorb incoming energy, convert it, dissipate it. Elegant, efficient, proven across centuries of warfare. Human engineers looked at that and rejected the premise. Instead of asking how to strengthen the shield, they asked, what if the incoming attack doesn't behave like energy at all? That question led to rail accelerators. Not new in concept, but pushed beyond anything considered practical. Dense kinetic projectiles. Accelerated to velocities so extreme that they stopped behaving like conventional matter in combat scenarios. The Empire had never prioritized such weapons. Why would they? Their shields handled energy. And energy was what everyone used. That assumption became the first crack. Then came targeting systems. The Empire relied on precision, coherent beams, exact calculations, perfect lock solutions. Human systems were built to interfere. Multiple firing vectors. Overlapping trajectories. Unpredictable interference patterns that made defensive calculations unstable. Not cleaner, but harder to counter. Every system followed the same philosophy. Don't match the opponent. Force them to fight something they don't understand. Years passed. The work expanded. Power systems were redesigned to handle unstable loads. Drive systems were pushed beyond safe operating limits. Hull structures were reinforced in ways that sacrificed beauty for survivability. Every design decision came with a trade-off. More stress, more heat, more risk, but also more unpredictability. The Harbinger was the result of all those decisions layered together. It wasn't a refined product. It was a first answer. A prototype in the truest sense of the word. Something built not to be perfect, but to prove that a different approach could work. 17 years of funding. 6 project directors. Political scandals that nearly shut it down. Investigations into missing resources that never quite found the full picture. And behind all of it, Malikshin, the one who didn't quit, didn't ask the wrong questions in public, didn't draw attention. He just kept the program alive. Quietly, patiently, long enough for it to become real. By the time the Harbinger was complete, it carried systems that had never been used in real combat. Weapons the Empire didn't have names for. Technologies derived from theories the Empire had explored, and then abandoned. Too complex. Too situational. Not worth the effort. Humanity had taken those discarded ideas and built an entire warship around them. Not because it was efficient, but because it created one specific advantage. Surprise. And surprise in the first moments of a fight was often the only advantage that mattered. The Empire had spent 30 years watching humanity, measuring it, classifying it, predicting its development. What they didn't realize was that humanity had been watching them too, learning not just what they built, but what they chose not to build, and asking the one question that changed everything. Why not? The council chamber beneath Geneva felt smaller than it was. Too many people. Too many opinions. Not enough time. On the central display, the red formation of 412 Empire ships remained fixed beyond the edge of the solar system, silent, patient, and very real. The countdown in the corner continued to fall. 18 hours remaining. Voices overlapped across the table. "We cannot fight that," one of the senior diplomats said, trying to keep his tone controlled. "This is not a negotiation position. This is extinction risk." A general disagreed immediately. "If we hand over the Harbinger now, we confirm every assumption they've made about us for the last 30 years. And if we don't," someone else snapped, "we lose the planet." Another voice cut in. "There has to be a middle ground, delay, partial compliance, a demonstration." "There is no middle ground," the general replied sharply. "They didn't send 400 ships to negotiate." The argument spiraled. Fear against pride. Caution against defiance. Survival against dignity. At the far end of the table, Alina Vasquez sat still. Hands flat. Eyes level. Listening. She had heard all of this before. In smaller rooms. In earlier briefings. In quieter versions of this same debate. Nothing in the arguments had changed. Only the stakes had. Burkov raised his hand, forcing silence back into the room. "We are out of time," he said. "We need a decision." His eyes moved to Alina. "Commander," he said carefully, "state your position clearly for the record." Every eye in the room turned to her. Alina didn't rush. When she spoke, her voice carried easily, not loud, not aggressive, just certain. "The Empire believes we built a weapon we don't understand," she said. A few people frowned. "That's not what they said." "It's exactly what they said," Alina replied calmly. "Just not in those words." She gestured to the display. "They sent 412 ships to take one vessel." Pause. "That tells us two things." The room stayed quiet. "They are afraid of the Harbinger," she said. "And they think we are more afraid than they are." No one interrupted. Because for the first time, the situation wasn't being described in terms of loss. It was being reframed. "They expect us to surrender," Alina continued. "They expect hesitation. Debate. Delay." Her gaze moved across the table. "They expect us to act like observers." That word landed heavily. Observer. The role they had played for 30 years. The role the Empire still believed they were playing. Alina leaned forward slightly. "We are not observers anymore." Silence. A diplomat shook his head slowly. "You're asking us to gamble the entire planet on a prototype that has never seen real combat." Alina met his eyes. "No," she said. "I'm asking you to recognize that the Empire already made that gamble." She tapped the display. "They brought everything they had, for one ship." A long pause. "They wouldn't have done that if they were certain." Burkov exhaled slowly. "And if they're right?" he asked quietly. "If the Harbinger fails?" Alina didn't hesitate. "Then we were never in control of this situation to begin with." That answer settled over the room like weight. Because it removed the illusion. There was no safe option. Only different kinds of risk. She sat back slightly. Calm again. "We built the Harbinger to answer a question," she said. A beat. "Now we find out if the answer was correct." The room remained silent for several seconds. Then Burkov looked around the table. "Prepare for vote." It wasn't unanimous. Not even close. Hands went up slowly. Reluctantly. Some not at all. Fear didn't disappear. It just stopped being the only factor. Burkov counted. Checked twice. Then nodded. Authorization granted. The words felt heavier than any argument that had come before them. Because now, there was no more debate. Only action. Alina stood. No speech. No acknowledgement. She simply turned and walked out of the chamber. Back toward Dock 7. Back toward the ship that had already changed the balance. Whether it worked or not. Above the ocean, the night remained still. But in the dark water below, the beast was about to wake up. Dock 7 was nearly empty when Alina returned. Most of the crew had already been cleared through final checks. The remaining personnel moved quietly, efficiently, no unnecessary conversation, no wasted motion. Everyone understood what was about to happen. The Harbinger waited in the dark water. Unmoving. Patient. Its hull lights glowed in low amber standby, reflecting faintly across the surface like something alive just beneath it. Alina walked down the long metal ramp toward the ship. Each step echoed softly. When she reached the base, she didn't pause. Didn't hesitate. She placed her hand against the hull as she stepped inside, not out of ritual, not for luck, just to feel it. Solid. Cold. Real. The interior of the Harbinger was nothing like Empire ships. No wide ceremonial corridors. No towering ceilings designed to impress. Everything was tight. Functional. Built for use, not for show. The bridge sat at the center of the ship. And it was small. Smaller than anyone expected for a vessel of this size. 8 stations. 1 command chair. 3 walls of integrated displays. No wasted space. No unnecessary movement. The entire room was designed around one idea: efficiency under pressure. Alina stepped into the command chair and sat down. The console came alive beneath her hands. System feeds lit up around the bridge: engine status, shield integrity, weapons diagnostics, crew readiness. All green. For now. She pulled up the crew manifest. 61 personnel. The smallest crew ever assigned to a ship this size. Not because they didn't have more people. Because they didn't need them. Every system was optimized. Every role selected carefully. Alina had chosen all of them herself. She knew their strengths, their limits, how they reacted under stress. There were no unknowns on this ship, except the enemy. She keyed the ship-wide channel. Her voice carried evenly through every corridor. This is Commander Vasquez. Pause. We launch in 6 hours. No dramatic speech. No attempt to inspire. Just clarity. If you can sleep, sleep. If you can't, report to your station and run checks. Another pause. Either is acceptable. She closed the channel. On the bridge, the crew moved into position one by one. Sergeant Diana Osei at tactical. Kara Andretti at weapons. Tours at communications. Each of them quiet, focused, prepared. No one asked if they would win. That question didn't matter anymore. Time passed. Final diagnostics completed. Engine cycles tested. Weapons brought to ready state. Outside, the sky above the ocean remained dark. Somewhere far beyond it, the Empire fleet was already moving, closing the distance, preparing to arrive. On the main display, the solar system appeared in soft blue light. Planets in slow orbit. Empty space between them. A quiet stage waiting for something violent. Alina studied it for a long moment. Then she narrowed the display. Focused on one point. A small, warm signal near the center. Home. She didn't say anything. Didn't need to. After a moment, she dismissed the display. Status. Osei responded immediately. All systems green. Weapons at full readiness. Engines? Nominal. Output stable. Shields? Fully charged. Alina nodded once. Release docking clamps. A low vibration ran through the ship as the clamps disengaged. The Harbinger didn't rise dramatically. Didn't surge forward. It simply moved. Slow at first. Then steadily upward. Water slid off its hull as it cleared the dock. For a moment, it hovered just above the surface. A massive, silent shape against the dark. Then the engines ignited. Not with a roar, but with a deep, controlled force that pushed the ship upward into the sky. The dock lights fell away beneath it. The ocean became a reflection. Then a memory. Within minutes, the Harbinger broke atmosphere. Stars replaced sky. Silence replaced sound. The ship adjusted its trajectory automatically, aligning with the calculated intercept point at the edge of the solar system, where the Empire would arrive. On the bridge, no one spoke unnecessarily. No cheering. No tension-filled chatter. Just focus. Alina leaned back slightly in the command chair. Come. Controlled. Ready. Estimated time to contact? She asked. Osei checked the display. 26 hours. Alina nodded. That's enough. She rested her hands lightly on the console. Behind her, the ship hummed quietly, systems alive, weapons armed, everything waiting for the moment it had been built for. For 30 years, humanity had watched. For 17 years, they had built. Now, they were about to be tested. And the Harbinger was already on its way to meet the answer. They arrived exactly on schedule. Not early. Not late. Perfect. At the edge of the solar system, beyond Neptune's orbit, space distorted for a fraction of a second. Then reality snapped back into place. And the fleet appeared. Not gradually. Not ship by ship. All at once. 412 warships. The maneuver had a name in Empire doctrine. The curtain. A mass emergence in tight formation, every vessel dropping out of faster-than-light travel within the same narrow window, locking into position before the light of their own arrival had finished crossing the gap between them. It wasn't just strategy. It was theater. A statement that said, "We do not arrive. We appear." On the Harbinger's bridge, the long-range sensors lit up instantly. Red markers bloomed across the display like a field of sudden fire. Osei stared at the screen. "That's all of them," she said quietly. No one needed confirmation. The formation was unmistakable. A wide, layered arc stretching across space, deep enough that it looked endless from certain angles. Destroyers forming the outer lines. Carriers positioned along the flanks. Fast attack craft embedded at the front like teeth. And at the center, set slightly back, surrounded by multiple defensive layers, the flagship, Idea's sovereign will. The command ship, the brain of the fleet. Alina studied the formation for a few seconds. "Textbook," she said. Osei nodded. Chapter 1. The Empire didn't improvise when it didn't have to. And they didn't think they had to. "Open channel," Alina said. Tor's hands moved quickly across his console. "Channel open." Static filled the bridge for a brief moment. Then a voice came through. Flat. Controlled. Translated perfectly into neutral tones. "This is Grand Admiral Ketherin of the 1st Corrective Fleet, acting under authority of the Interstellar Dominion." No emotion. No urgency. Just certainty. "You have ignored the terms of your final notice." Pause. "You have 1 hour to transmit formal surrender of the vessel designated Harbinger and stand down all crew." The bridge remained silent. Everyone listening. "After 1 hour," the voice continued, "we will begin." The channel stayed open. Waiting. Expecting. Alina leaned forward slightly in her chair. "Tors?" she said quietly. He nodded. "Transmitting." Her voice went out across the distance. Across hundreds of ships. Across a fleet that had never needed to repeat an order. "This is Commander Alina Vasquez of the UES Harbinger." A brief pause. Then, "We're not surrendering the ship." Silence. Even the background system seemed to quiet for a second. On the other end, Admiral Ketherin responded. There was something in his tone now, not quite irritation, not quite disbelief. More like someone deciding how much patience a situation deserved. "Commander," he said, "you have 1 vessel." Another pause. "We have 412. Alina didn't hesitate. "I know," she said. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't sharpen. It stayed exactly the same. "Come." Controlled. "We're ready when you are." She nodded once. "Tors?" The channel closed. On the bridge no one spoke. But something had shifted. The moment had passed from warning to reality. On the Sovereign Will, Admiral Ketherin stood at the center of his command deck, watching the Harbinger's signal on his tactical display. 400 meters long. Single vessel. Minimal crew estimate. Irregular hull structure. Unknown weapon systems. He had seen ships like this before. New designs. Experimental prototypes. Every species produced them at some point. They were usually impressive. Occasionally dangerous. Never decisive. He studied the data for a moment longer. Then gave the order. Advance. The fleet moved. Slow at first. Then with increasing speed. A controlled wall of firepower shifting forward, compressing distance, tightening engagement range. On the Harbinger's bridge, the display updated. Range closing. Formation holding. Weapons charging. Osei glanced at Alina. Orders. Alina didn't look away from the screen. Maintain course. That made a few heads turn. "Commander," Osei began carefully, "they're advancing in full formation." "I see it." A beat. Then. "They expect us to hold position," Alina said. Her eyes remained fixed on the approaching fleet. "They expect us to react." Another beat. "They expect us to be careful." She leaned forward slightly. "Let's not be predictable." Osei's expression shifted. "Understanding." "Helm?" Alina said. "Yes, Commander." "Bring us forward." Pause. Full power. For the first time since the Empire had arrived, something unexpected happened. The Harbinger moved first. Not away. Not to the side. Not into a defensive position. It accelerated directly toward the fleet. Straight into the formation. On the Sovereign Will, Ketherin's tactical officer blinked. "It's moving toward us." "I see it," Ketherin said. But this time, he was paying closer attention. Because that wasn't standard behavior. Not for a ship outnumbered 400 to 1. Not for a species still under observer status. Something about the motion, the lack of hesitation, didn't fit. On the Harbinger's bridge, the stars stretched slightly as the engines pushed harder. The distance between the two forces began to collapse. Fast. Osei's voice came sharp now. Range, 40,000 kilometers and closing. Weapon systems hummed to life. A low vibration ran through the hull, felt more than heard. The ship wasn't just moving. It was waking up. 30,000 kilometers, Osei continued. Alina watched the formation grow larger on the screen. Layer after layer of ships. Weapons charging. Firepower building. Everything the Empire had brought. Focused on one target. Her ship. She didn't blink. Target the lead elements, she said. Osei nodded immediately. Locked. Alina leaned back slightly in the command chair. Come. Steady. Let's show them, she said quietly. A beat. What they missed. The distance kept closing. And somewhere between certainty and surprise, the first shot was about to be fired. Range 20,000 kilometers, Osei said. The number settled over the bridge. This was it. Alina didn't raise her voice. Fire. There was no explosion. No dramatic recoil. No cinematic blast of light. Instead, a sharp shift in pressure rippled through the ship, followed by a high metallic tone that echoed through the hull as 32 rail accelerators discharged at once. Invisible lines of death crossed the distance. Dense metal rods. Accelerated to velocities the Empire had never needed to consider. On the front line of the Empire formation, fast attack craft moved to intercept. Their shields were already active. Advanced. Reliable. Designed to absorb incoming energy, disperse it, convert it into harmless heat. They were perfect. Against the wrong kind of weapon. The first impact didn't look like destruction. It looked like failure. 3 ships simply broke. The penetrators passed through them, clean and fast, punching through shields that didn't know how to respond, through hulls that weren't designed for that kind of stress. For a fraction of a second, the ships held their shape. Then, they came apart. Not in fire, but in structure. Metal tearing. Systems collapsing. Internal compartments exposed to vacuum faster than alarms could trigger. On the Sovereign Will, the tactical display updated. 3 contacts, gone. Ketherin stared at the screen. Report. His tactical officer didn't answer immediately. That alone was unusual. Unknown weapon type, the officer said finally. Pause. Shield penetration confirmed. Another pause. No detectable energy signature. Ketherin frowned slightly. What? It's reading as solid mass projectiles, the officer continued. Velocity. He gave the number. Silence. Ketherin looked at it. Then looked again. That's not possible, he said quietly. Not denial. Calculation. Because he knew exactly what their technology could achieve. And that number was beyond it. Sir, the tactical officer said sharper now, they're firing again. The second volley hit deeper into the formation. Not fast attack craft this time. Destroyers. Heavy ships. Reinforced hulls. Shield arrays designed to withstand sustained bombardment. 4 of them were struck almost simultaneously. One lost its forward section entirely, sheared off like it had never been attached. Another went dark, power systems collapsing instantly. A third held for a moment, then detonated internally as its shield system failed catastrophically. The fourth tried to compensate. Reoriented its armor. Boosted shield output. For a split second. It looked like it might survive. Then the penetrator punched through anyway. And the ship folded in on itself. Across the Empire fleet, reports flooded in. Unknown weapon. Shields ineffective. Recommend tactical revision. Ketherin stood perfectly still. Processing. Adjusting. Full advance, he ordered. His voice was calm. Controlled. All ships open fire. No hesitation now. If they have something new, he said, we overwhelm it. Hundreds of weapons charged at once. The Empire didn't do half measures. They did overwhelming force. From across the formation, coherent particle beams fired. Streams of concentrated energy, precise and devastating, converging on a single point. The Harbinger. On its bridge, the displays flared. Incoming fire. Massive. Continuous. Alina didn't move. Shields holding, Osei reported. The first beam struck. And something happened. Something the Empire had never seen before. The beams didn't splash. Didn't disperse cleanly. They hit the Harbinger's shield boundary. And broke apart. The tight, organized structure of the energy unraveled at the point of contact, like a perfect formation collapsing into chaos. The energy was still there. It still hit. But it was weaker. Fragmented. Disrupted. Coherence loss across all incoming vectors, Osei said, almost disbelieving. The Harbinger's hull lit up with impacts. Warning indicators flashed amber across the bridge. Shield strength dropping 82%, 79%. Still holding. Still stable. Ketherin's tactical officer stared at the data. Their shields, he began, unsure. They're not absorbing the energy, he said finally. They're breaking it. Ketherin's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. Because this wasn't an upgrade. This was a different approach entirely. On the Harbinger, Alina watched the numbers. Watched the damage. Watched the incoming fire continue. Then she gave the next order. Return fire. Weapons Officer Andretti didn't hesitate. Rail accelerators cycling. Torpedo tubes ready. Fire. Another wave of kinetic penetrators launched. This time supported by heavier payloads. The Empire formation shuddered. More ships vanished from the display. More gaps appeared in what had been a perfect wall. Ketherin watched it happen. One ship. Destroying multiple targets per volley. Breaking shields. Ignoring established defense models. Not slowing down. Not retreating. The first minute of engagement passed. Then the second. By the third. The numbers no longer made sense. Ketherin spoke again. Quieter now. Update casualties. His officer hesitated. Then answered. 16 ships lost. Pause. Additional damage across multiple units. Ketherin looked at the Harbinger's signal. Still there. Still moving. Still fighting. One ship. Against 412. And for the first time in his career, the outcome was no longer certain. On the Harbinger's bridge, the crew felt it too. Not fear. Not yet. But something else. The realization that the thing they had built, the thing they had never truly tested, was working. Alina leaned forward slightly. Eyes locked on the battlefield. Come. Focused. Keep pressure on the front line, she said. No excitement. No triumph. Just direction. Because this wasn't the victory. This was just the beginning of the shock. And the Empire hadn't even adapted yet. Admiral Ketherin didn't panic. He adapted. Pull the fast attack craft back, he ordered. Reassign them to flanking vectors. Wide arc full speed. His voice was steady again. Controlled. Engage from both sides simultaneously. On the tactical display, what remained of the fast attack craft broke formation and split outward, left and right, accelerating hard into two sweeping arcs around the Harbinger. It was a classic maneuver. Hit the target from multiple directions. Force the shields to divide attention. Overload the defense faster than it could compensate. It had worked before. It had broken fleets stronger than this one. On the Harbinger's bridge, Osei tracked the movement instantly. 46 incoming, she said. 23 each flank. Alina nodded. I see them. The main formation was still advancing from the front. Now the flanks were closing in fast. A perfect crossfire. A perfect trap. For anything that hadn't planned for it. Range? Alina asked. 30 seconds to effective firing distance. Alina didn't hesitate. Andretti, she said. Flank arrays. The weapons officer's hands were already moving. Ready. On my mark. The seconds ticked down. On both sides of the Harbinger, the fast attack craft accelerated into terminal approach. Too fast to slow, too committed to break away without losing the strike. On their sensors, the Harbinger was still one ship. Still one target. They expected forward-facing weapons. Maybe limited side defenses. What they did not expect was what came next. Along the Harbinger's flanks, the sealed panels began to open. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Like something unfolding. Revealing. Not armor. Guns. Every single panel concealed a weapon. The Empire's observers had seen them for years. Photographed them. Cataloged them. And dismissed them. Because no ship was designed like this. No ship needed that many weapons on its sides. That assumption was about to cost them. Mark, Alina said. The Harbinger fired. Both flanks at once. Not rail accelerators. Something different. Shorter range. Higher rate of fire. A storm of metal. The space around the ship filled instantly, thousands of projectiles saturating the approach vectors. There was no clean line. No safe path. Just density. Velocity. Impact. The fast attack craft had no time to react. They were already too close. Already too fast. Some tried to brake. Too late. Some fired anyway. It didn't matter. They entered the kill zone and disappeared. Not in explosions. Not in dramatic flashes. But in fragments. Shredded mid-approach. Momentum carrying what remained of them forward into nothing. On the Sovereign Will, Ketherin's tactical display updated again. Losses climbed. Fast attack craft, gone. Destroyers, gone. Total losses, 45 ships. In under 8 minutes. His second-in-command spoke carefully. Admiral, their shield strength is still above 70%. Ketherin didn't answer immediately. Because that number, that was the problem. He had committed the full firepower of a massive formation. And the target was still holding. Still advancing. Still winning. For the first time. The equation had changed. Bring me the formation commanders, he said. His voice was still calm. But there was something underneath now. Something new. Because the Harbinger wasn't behaving like a prototype. It wasn't experimental. It wasn't fragile. It was behaving like something that had been designed. Specifically. To survive this. And now. It was about to get worse. On the Harbinger's bridge, Alina watched the battlefield. The formation was still intact at the front. Still dangerous. Still firing. But the edges were breaking. And she had been waiting for that. Prepare collapse array, she said. There was a brief silence. Andridi looked up from her console. She knew what that meant. Everyone on the bridge did. They had trained for it. Simulated it. Studied the theory. But theory and reality were different things. Charging, she said. A new sound filled the ship. Not the low vibration of weapons. Not the hum of engines. This was higher. Sharper. A rising tone that seemed to press against the air itself. The crew called it the whine. Because there wasn't a better word for it. Outside, the Harbinger accelerated again. Not away. Not out of range. But forward. Straight into the center of the Empire formation. On the Sovereign Will, Ketherin felt it before the instruments reported it. A subtle shift. A wrongness in space. Like the floor had moved slightly beneath his feet. What is that? He asked. No one had an answer. Because nothing in their database matched it. On the Harbinger's bridge. Range to formation center? Alina asked. 8,000 kilometers, Osei replied. Closing. We're inside their formation. Alina nodded. Good. Every screen was flashing now. Incoming fire. Shield stress. Heat warnings. But she ignored it. Because this was the moment they had built the ship for. Charge complete, Andridi said. Her voice was steady. Even now, Alina didn't hesitate. Fire. The collapse array activated. And for a fraction of a second, everything went quiet. Not completely. But enough. Enough to notice. Enough to feel wrong. Then, the effect spread. A sphere of disruption expanding outward from the Harbinger. 3,000 kilometers in every direction. Inside that sphere, ships stopped. Not slowed. Not weakened. Stopped. Drive systems failed instantly. Hard shutdowns. Power cascades. Control loss. 47 Empire vessels froze in space. Dead. Drifting. Weapons silent. Systems offline. On the Harbinger's display, they appeared as a cluster of unmoving targets. Perfectly exposed. Osei stared. 47 confirmed disabled. Alina's expression didn't change. Rail accelerators, she said. Target the heaviest ships first. There was no hesitation now. No debate. The Harbinger fired again. At close range. At targets that couldn't move. One by one. They were erased. Within minutes, the center of the Empire formation was gone. Not damaged. Not weakened. Gone. When the collapse field dissipated, the remaining ships began to recover. But the formation, the perfect structure, was broken. Irreversibly. On the Sovereign Will, Ketherin received the updated report. He read it once. Then again. Total losses. 69 ships. In minutes, he looked at the tactical display. At the Harbinger. Still inside his formation. Still active. Still coming. For the first time in 40 years. He didn't have a correct move ready. Behind him, his second-in-command spoke quietly. At this rate, the formation will not hold. Ketherin nodded slowly. Yes, he said. Then, break formation. The words felt wrong. Even as he said them. Maximum dispersal. Independent engagements. It went against everything the Empire believed in. Everything that had won them wars for centuries. But concentration of force didn't work. When the enemy could sit inside it and tear it apart. Across the battlefield, the Empire fleet began to scatter. The wall dissolved. Ships peeling away in every direction. Trying to create distance. Trying to survive. On the Harbinger's bridge, Osei watched it happen. They're dispersing. Alina picked up her coffee. Took a slow sip. Still calm. I see it. She set the cup down. Eyes still locked on the display. Now we go for the heart, she said. Osei turned slightly. The flagship. Alina nodded. Everything else follows it. Because in that moment, the battle wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about something deeper. Something more permanent. Breaking a fleet was one thing. Breaking its confidence was another. And Alina knew exactly how to do it. Set course, she said quietly. Full power. The Harbinger turned. And accelerated. Straight toward the sovereign will. And for the first time, the Empire wasn't just adapting. It was reacting. The Harbinger didn't slow down. It didn't hesitate. It locked onto one target. The sovereign will. The largest ship in the fleet. The most protected. The command center. On every Empire vessel, the same image appeared. One human ship. Coming straight for the flagship. No evasive maneuvers. No defensive posture. Just pursuit. On the sovereign will, Admiral Ketherin watched the approach vector update in real time. Distance closing. Speed constant. No deviation. For the first time in the engagement, he didn't see a tactical pattern. He saw intent. They're targeting us directly, his tactical officer said. Ketherin didn't respond immediately, because he already understood what that meant. The flagship fell. The fleet wouldn't just lose command. It would lose confidence. And that was harder to rebuild than ships. Adjust heading, he ordered. Maximum thrust. Pull us out of effective range. The sovereign will begin to turn. Slow at first. Then faster. A ship of that size couldn't pivot instantly. It took time. Time the Harbinger was already using. Across the scattered fleet, sensors updated. Flagship trajectory changed. Direction. Away from the target. Away from the Harbinger. No one said the word. But everyone saw it. The flagship was running. On the Harbinger's bridge, Osei exhaled slowly. He's pulling back. Alina corrected her calmly. He's repositioning. A faint shift in tone. Not mockery. Just accuracy. Maintain pursuit, she said. Do not fire on the flagship. That made Andridi look up. Commander? Alina didn't take her eyes off the display. If we destroy it, she said quietly, this becomes a battle. Pause. If it runs, it becomes a message. That was the difference. One ended the fight. The other changed everything. Behind them, across the battlefield, Empire ships watched their command vessel create distance. Watched the Harbinger follow. Watched the gap between certainty and reality widen. Then the first signal came in. Commander, Tor said, voice tight. We're receiving hails. How many? 14. Pause. Now 15. Osei turned slightly. Ceasefire requests? Tor's nodded. They're asking for terms. Alina considered that for exactly 1 second. Don't respond, she said. Let them wait. Because hesitation, on their side, was now a weapon. Open a channel to Earth. Tors complied instantly. The connection established. Deep beneath Geneva, Malik Chin stood in the operations center, eyes fixed on the live tactical feed. He had watched everything. Every loss. Every shift. Every impossible moment become real. When Alina's voice came through, the room went silent. The flagship is running, she said. 15 ships requesting ceasefire. Formation is gone. Pause. I need you to do it. Chin didn't ask what she meant. He had been waiting for this moment for 17 years. Are you sure? He asked anyway. Not doubt. Process. Do it now, Alina replied. While they're watching. Chin nodded to the communications officer. The transmission went out. Every channel. Every frequency. Every system the Empire used. And beyond. Across the solar system. And outward. On the relay station above Mars, Counselor Esh received it first. He read it once. Then again. Then he sat down slowly. Because what he was looking at wasn't just information. It was a shift. The message was simple. Precise. Verified. U.S. Harbinger, Prototype Class 01. The 0 indicated proof of concept. The 1. The first of its kind. Attached was a secondary file. A construction manifest. Esh opened it. And felt something cold settle in his thoughts. 7 additional vessels. Each larger than the Harbinger. each incorporating improved systems, each already under construction. 4 of them, more than 60% complete. The final line of the transmission read, "We have been building. We have not been idle. And we are not what you decided we were." On the sovereign will, Ketherin received the same message. He read it in silence. Every line, every detail. 7 ships. Not theoretical. Not planned. Real. Building. Advancing. He looked back at the tactical display. At the Harbinger. Still behind them. Still close enough to matter. Still not firing. Because it didn't need to. "They let us see the prototype," he said quietly. No one answered. "They wanted us to bring everything we had against the one they were willing to show." A long pause. "Sir," his second-in-command began carefully. Ketherin raised a hand. Not to silence him, but because he already knew what came next. He opened the fleet-wide channel. His voice carried across every remaining ship. For the first time in his career, he gave an order he had never needed before. "All ships, stand down. Pause. Hold position. Not retreat. Not advance. Just stop." Across the battlefield, weapons powered down. Engines stabilized. The chaos paused. On the Harbinger's bridge, Osei blinked. "They're stopping." Alina nodded once. "Good." She leaned back slightly. For the first time since the battle began, she allowed herself a breath. Not relief. Not yet. But control. Because this was the real victory. Not the ships destroyed. Not the formation broken. But this moment, where the Empire chose to stop. Hours later, the official message arrived. Not from the fleet. From the highest authority. The Imperial High Council. Formal. Careful. Precise. They requested a diplomatic meeting. At the earliest mutually convenient time. Tors read it twice, just to be sure. Then looked at Alina. She didn't smile. Didn't react outwardly at all. She simply said, "Tomorrow." A beat. Geneva. The same room. The same table. Where for 30 years, humanity had sat as observers. Now, they would sit as equals. Maybe more than equals. Because power had shifted. Not just in ships. Not just in weapons. But in perception. The Empire had spent decades deciding what humanity was. Now, they were going to learn what humanity had become. And somewhere far away, in hidden docks beneath dark water, 7 more ships continued to grow. Silent. Unseen. Waiting. Just like the first one had.